Everyone, welcome to episode 584 of the My 123 Cents podcast. I'm Kevin Huntsberger, joined this week by Chad Smart. And Chad, how are things going here in Illinois, the Midwest specifically? We're sitting under almost a foot of snow, so I would imagine things are much better in Southern California.
Well, like I said last week, it's cold. It was 62 degrees the other day, and I had to put on the hoodie. But yeah, no, everything's going well. We thankfully don't have the snow that you guys have. And I was going to ask you if you're going out after we get done recording, if you're going to go out and build a snow mondo.
Oh, yes. If AI may build one for me, but if I was artistic enough, I would give it a shot. But no, and this snow seems very powdery when I was out shoveling it, so I don't know if it's very buildable. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'll get inspired and try that later, or maybe I'll make a yellow Mondo if you
Oh,
catch my drift.
as we say, you know the difference between snowmen and snow women?
No.
Snowballs.
That is your joke of the week, folks, right here on the Jittery Monkey Podcasting Network. Going to talk about a lot of things today. We did threw a thing out to solicit some questions, and Ken Johnson, who I'm going to dub the My 123 Cents Superfan. He is an active participant in all of these questions. He does all of the fundraisers that we do for the toy drive. So I'm going to plug that first because we still are about halfway on the Royal Rumble contest, and the Royal Rumble is coming up on Saturday. And I saw a picture of the progress of the stadium, so it looks like they're going to have a place to have the Rumble. So if you haven't bought a spot yet, get it in. It's $5 per spot, and it's out there. I did a boost on Facebook, and people are seeing it, but nobody's responding to it. So now is the time. If you haven't already bought a thing, a spot, if you will, do it now. Planning on doing the drawing. I would like to do it Thursday night to give everybody a chance to look and see their numbers, but I may push it back to Friday night because the show starts early on Saturday because it is, again, in Saudi Arabia. So, Chad, what are your initial thoughts seeing this stadium kind of under construction, and now it looks like they're going to make it? I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know how safe I would feel sitting in that place. But there was a picture from what was it, the 5th of January, and it was an empty lot, to the 15th where they had some up, and then the 25th, which is today as we're recording this, I should say, and it looks pretty much done. So that's fast.
Yeah, well, I just want to take this time to declare myself for the Rumble because uh, since 30 men have not yet declared, I figure I might as well get my name in there. And I'm sure I could do as well as Drew Carey did.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which, so I'm going to ask you first to answer your question. I haven't seen the latest update on the stadium. I'm curious to see what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. And yes, I don't know if I would be sitting high up in the back nosebleed sections, which would be the only section that I could probably afford. So I'd probably stay at home and watch it on TV.
Now, do you, and I don't mean to go down a whole different rabbit hole here, but when Saudi Arabia, they talk about Saudi buying a show and paying,
Mm.
I don't remember if it was, and is WrestleMania going there next year? I've heard that. Is that a rumor or has that been confirmed?
No, they confirmed that last year.
Oh, it is. So Saudi is hosting WrestleMania
Yeah.
next year. Is that why they built this stadium?
I think possibly that
Okay.
is part of the reason.
So when they buy these shows, do they offer this as entertainment for the people of Saudi, or do people in Saudi buy tickets and go and see the show as well? I couldn't remember. I thought I had heard at one point that they buy these shows, and like the company's not going to make any more money either way.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it's a case of then the Saudi government gets its money back from selling it to their people or what.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's like when WCW did the show in North Korea
Mhm.
and, the North Korean government made people go to the show, or how people get. I know, I mean, I've seen things that talk about ticket prices for the
Mhm.
show. So I'm assuming Saudi people are buying it, or if you
Okay.
wanted to go yourself. But looking back at past shows, which granted they haven't had a major show like a Rumble or a Mania, but I don't recall seeing too many, I would say, non-locals,
Hmm.
for lack of a better term, there. So I'm curious to see how Mania does next year.
WrestleMania 43 will be um, the first truly international WrestleMania. It's been to Canada a few times, but uh,
Whatever.
we see, from when we've been to WrestleMania in the
Mm.
past, we've seen an influx of international travels. We met our Aussie friends 20 years ago. We'll talk more about that as we get closer to WrestleMania. Can you believe it's been 20 years
I
since
can't.
our first trip to WrestleMania? But the point is, the UK, Australia, uh, Japan, all countries
Canada.
around the world are converging in the United States for this show. So I'll be interested to see the contingency from the United States that travels to Saudi for this.
Mm.
Will we see? I can assure you, I won't be booking a flight and heading out there, but it'll be interesting to see if American fans follow along and do this as well. What's your early prediction on that? Will we see? Um, I'm sure there will be some, but I can't
I
imagine a
mean,
ton.
yeah, I don't know. And I mean, I believe it's 2 nights still.
Hmm.
Um, and, given everything else that goes along with WrestleMania week now, um,
Right.
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. And I also think it'll be interesting to see if any. I mean, I don't see the independent promotions going over and staging shows
Right.
like they do here. But I think we've talked about it before. Given the time zone difference,
Right.
it'll be another early show for Americans.
Hmm.
Will AEW, TNA, or any of these independents decide on a city to go to and have still that WrestleMania moment? Yes.
Yeah, because WrestleCon, and here's always been the thing that I've kind of chuckled at is all the haters of WWE or of mainstream wrestling, and then most of the small independent, WrestleCon became a much, but even when we went, what, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, it was a kind of a smaller event, I felt like. I mean,
Mm.
they had some names there, but it has morphed into this giant beast because of WrestleMania. So it'll be interesting to see if WrestleCon and like you said, some of these smaller independent companies, do they set up and do their stuff and can they simulcast, not simulcast, but can they broadcast, if they have the ESPN app, and I don't know what the legalities. When I hosted the party last year at a local bar here in Carbondale, um, they got in trouble for showing WrestleMania. There probably wasn't more than 15 or 20 people in there at any given time, but apparently there I don't know what actually ended up becoming of it, but I was told that there were some ramifications from that. So I don't know what legality wise what folks can do, but if they like you said, if it show starts at 11 a.m. local time,
Mhm.
you could do a watch party and then host your WrestleCon or your wrestling events.
Mhm.
I think last year and maybe this year in Vegas, I haven't really looked at this year's lineup, but last year I think there were over 40 different shows, not just wrestling, but wrestling themed or wrestling related with
Mhm.
the podcast. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit with one of the questions from Ken. But um, yeah, I don't, it's interesting. And back in '88 when WrestleMania 4 happened, and in the early days of WrestleMania, they did the um what do you call it? Not
Closed
satellite,
caption, or not closed caption, closed circuit.
closed circuit. And I
Yeah.
wondered, maybe WWE cashes in on that here in the States and has big cities, because I think they did that. What was that 360 or whatever the camera
The
view they
Cosm.
yeah, that was that last year at WrestleMania they did that?
I mean, there's a place here in LA down by SoFi where WrestleMania 39 was, and it's either Dallas or Houston. It's called Cosm, COSM, which is a huge screen
Uh-huh.
that they show all the WWE events on, and other sports as well. And I mean, I've checked it out, and I think it was like almost 100 or $150 just to get in to watch
Hmm.
one of the WWE. So I'm like, again, if I'm paying that much money, I would rather be there in person.
Yeah.
And otherwise I'll sit at home and enjoy it
Right.
on my 12-inch screen. But and I know in Vegas, I can't remember who's putting it on, but they are having watch parties at like the various casino pool areas.
Yes, I did see that
So
too. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, in '88, I went for WrestleMania 4 to the Keel, and the ticket was $15, and I guess I don't know what that equates to today, but I don't think it's $150. But it was an interesting experience. Have you ever done anything like that where you go to the theater or go to the arena to watch it on?
I mean, I went to a theater to watch a TNA pay-per-view back,
Hmm.
I don't know, 15 years ago. So,
Was
and
that
that was, I mean, that was very odd because it was like maybe 15, 20 people in the theater. And
oh,
I don't, I mean, none of us talked to each other. And I don't know if there was like that, like, oh, we're in a theater, so you have to be,
yeah,
you're quiet, but you're watching a sporting event. And this was before Taylor Swift started, releasing her films and concerts into theaters where people would sing along. So
right,
it
right.
might be different now.
It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the first truly international
Mm.
WrestleMania. And obviously, SummerSlam '92 was in the UK, but technology and things have evolved. The company has grown by leaps and bounds since then.
Yeah.
So,
I
uh,
don't, I don't know if you've seen it, but apparently they have made the biggest offer to The Rock to come back to wrestle.
oh, really?
Um, and if you remember the rumors of when they started doing the Saudi shows, is that they asked for a lot of wrestlers that aren't available, let's just say, to
Hmm.
be there. And I saw a thing the other day about the greatest Royal Rumble, which they had, when it was 50 men and totally unnecessary. And there was a sumo wrestler that had never been in WWE before and apparently has not wrestled much since then. But that was because they couldn't get Yokozuna. They put brought this guy in to kind of be an equivalent, let's say. And I think
Really?
they should just called him Fokozuna or something. But yeah, it was very weird that because I forgot that the guy was even in there because um, I don't really remember much about the Greatest Royal Rumble other than the fact that much like when they did the 40-man battle royal that Del Rio won, it's
Yeah,
totally unnecessary.
right.
But
Yeah, I just noticed my mic wasn't plugged in, so I plugged it in. I don't know if it's changed the audio at all, folks.
I can
So
still hear you.
still hear me? That's good. Okay. Well, maybe it didn't change anything, but anyway, uh, yeah, the international shows are always I like them because they're earlier in the day, and like you said, you get the rest of the day then to kind of do
Yeah.
whatever. So, Royal Rumble coming up on Saturday again. Get your spots in the My 1 2 3 Cents Royal Rumble contest. $5, and the proceeds portion of it goes to the My 1 2 3 Cents Wrestling Figure Drive, and you, the winner of the Rumble, pocket it, and we'll have other prizes for different categories going on with the Rumble. Check it out on the My 1 2 3 Cents Facebook page.
All
So,
right. I was going to ask you real quick because I got sidetracked with my other answers. Going back to declaring myself for the Rumble, how do you feel? Because back when the Rumble started, it would just be they would do like the event center or a promo package and say, these people are in the Rumble, and
mhm,
now it's guys coming out and saying, I'm going to be in the Rumble. But it's always your top guys that you expect to
mhm.
be in the Rumble. So it's like, how do you feel about it? Because to me, I think it's very lame, and the fact that your undercard guys aren't coming out and declare, if anybody can just come out and declare themselves for the Rumble, why isn't Otis or Tozawa or El Grande Americano Trio coming out and saying, we're going to be in the Rumble? Because if you're getting the winner gets a shot at WrestleMania, the biggest stage, wouldn't shouldn't everybody be vying for a shot in the Rumble?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're trying to apply logic to an illogical situation. So,
True.
I feel like we have this discussion every year.
Yeah.
I don't know that I mean, yeah, it is lame in that then you get to the point where everybody is coming out and declaring. And I mean, again, logically, why wouldn't the champion declare themselves for the Rumble? They win the Rumble and then they don't have to, if
Yeah.
you were truly, especially a heel champion. Now, a babyface champion, yeah, they would want to defend the title, but as I could see MJF, if this were a AEW situation, I could
Yeah.
see MJF declaring and then saying, I'm going to win it and sit at home and
Yeah. Well,
cash
that's
my fat
because he's
paycheck.
still better than you. Okay. Yeah, I just think, especially, I feel like this year with the Rumble, and I'm going to go down another rabbit hole for you. This year's Rumble has felt very lackluster in the build to it, to where it's only been like the last week and a half that they've even started really promoting the Rumble. And I think there should be, maybe some qualifying matches between guys to get into the Rumble. But do you feel, and I don't know if you've watched Unreal season 2 yet.
I haven't even watched season one, so no.
All right. But we're coming off Saturday night's main event the night before we record this, which is a week before Rumble.
Hmm.
Do you feel because they've added the Saturday night's main events, they've added, WrestlePalooza, there are more televised events, even though there are less house shows or whatever, but more televised events. Do you think adding all those events is actually hindering the storytelling process, because now there's too much, or is there too much that they try to squeeze too much into short time span,
Yes,
instead of
there,
maybe having more stories spread out over everything, they condense the amount of stories that they're telling.
there is too much, because even at one point, and I don't know if they're still doing it, but they were doing some of the Twitter or X stuff, the Speed Championship and all
Mm.
that, things that were, you know, 30 years ago as a fan, yeah, I would have tried to consume as much as I could. We dreamed as teenagers,
Mm.
oh, I wish I could turn on and watch whenever I wanted, and now we literally can, and and now it's like, wait,
Mm.
too much. I don't want all of this, and I think
Yeah.
that's also part of the problem with TNA and its growth or movement going to AMC. You know, we're not really theoretically, yes, we're in a wrestling boom in terms of the amount of money that's being made, at least by WWE TKO, but part of that is because they have jacked the prices up for everything. It's not a true boom like it was in 97, 98, 99, in my opinion.
Mm.
And I think that trying to fit a third brand, technically, I guess a fourth brand if you count NXT, but trying to fit that TNA brand in there, putting it on Thursday nights and you know especially for guys like us who are in relationships with people who maybe don't want to sit and watch wrestling every night, and I don't want
Mm.
to watch wrestling every night anyway, but you know it's a lot. It's a lot, and I think that it has hurt the storytelling process to a degree. I do think that Saturday night's main event, this past one, uh was more in line with stories and kind of keeping the continuity from Raw and SmackDown uh, than other shows. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we're literally at that point a week away from the Royal Rumble, and we're doing a match to determine who's going to wrestle the champion.
Mm.
That Sami Zayn won. So does that mean that the other three now, Trick Williams and Randy Orton and Damian Priest, are they automatically now entered into the Royal Rumble, or will that, it'll be interesting to see if these three show up in the
Mm.
Rumble, because if they were good enough to be contenders for the champ, why not them be in the Royal Rumble? So, but
Yeah,
yeah, it has delayed the storytelling process, I think.
I agree. And it'll be interesting, like we said, with the Rumble being in Saudi. In the last few years, they've kind of gotten away from the surprise entrance, maybe like one or two instead of, however many they used to have. So it'll be interesting to see if there are any major surprises of older stars, not, somebody maybe debuting or returning.
So,
But
where do you put Jericho in that? And do you think the Jericho debate? I feel like this is all part of the plan, and I don't know if he's going to WWE or not.
mhm.
still apparently, I didn't check this morning, but the other day he was still on the AEW roster page. Powerhouse Hobbs is no longer on the AEW roster
Mm.
page. His contract is up. He's seemingly going to WWE. Does he show up at the Rumble? And then does Jericho show up at the Rumble, or is he staying in AEW, do you think?
I don't know. I think when speculation or rumors began about Jericho leaving AEW, the Rumble seemed like the logical place for him to re-debut.
Hmm.
But with it being in Saudi, how how easy would it be to keep him a secret?
Right.
Because again, based on nothing that I know factually and just what I think I've read or have heard in the past, when they do these international tours, they're grouped to get, they travel by bus. They don't just, they're not on their own like they are in the States.
Right.
So, where it'd be, I think it'd been in the past, like Jericho's like, oh, I flew in to a different city and then drove to where the show was so that I wouldn't be spotted at the
Yeah.
local airport,
Yeah.
that type of thing. Um, I don't know where Jericho's going to go. I've said before, I'm a fan of Jericho, but I think time is he's got more matches behind him than he has in front of him,
Mhm. Oh yeah.
obviously. So I think he should end in WWE. Um, but I also say that as someone who, again, is the AEW mark on this show and has really enjoyed AEW over the last year without Jericho. And if he came back and was kind of in the same place that he was in then, I don't think it would be a huge benefit to AEW. And that's not, I don't want to say like I don't want to see him and he doesn't have any value left, but I think AEW has done well to kind of move away from, I was going to say, move away from the established stars and started creating their own. They're putting the emphasis on their homegrown, in a sense, talent. But um, as I say that, I'm sure The Rock will show up next week on Dynamite.
One last question before we get to the question
Yeah.
from Ken, but um, AJ Styles, career on the line now at the Rumble. His contract allegedly ends in February. Rumble is January 31st. Is this the last we see of AJ Styles wrestling, or does he get the farewell treatment? Not to the degree that Cena got, but does it set up for AJ to win because he already lost on Raw? He wins this one, and then we get a rubber match where AJ does go away afterward at WrestleMania or perhaps sometime over the summer.
Yeah, I think everyone is surprised that they have added the stipulation to the Gunther match at the Rumble because, uh, like Michael Cole has said many times during the match on Saturday Night's Main Event, I think people expected him to be, even though he said this will be his last year, they expected a year, not a month.
Right, right.
And putting him versus Shinsuke on Saturday Night's Main Event as kind of a last time now matchup instead
Mhm.
of maybe actually building to that match later on in the year, I think gives some credibility to this could be AJ's last match. And, you know, from my perspective, it's Gunther should be this unstoppable force right now. After Goldberg, after Cena, he should he shouldn't be losing. And again, I don't know what the plan is for him for the rest of the year as far as like putting him into title mixes or what, but I I think it would be fitting for AJ to lose at Rumble because that's where he debuted. And so it's
Yeah.
like,
10
going
years
full
ago.
circle.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and then, I would like to see him lose that match and then show up in Dynamite in 2 weeks. So, um, as I just said about building their own stars, I don't know. It's actually one of those things where I can't predict it. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think as here's the other thing. Like if this happened, I know what they're doing with Gunther as far as making him like the legend killer. But to me, and again, applying logic to an illogical situation, Saturday night's main event back in July, Goldberg said, "It's my last match or my last WWE match." His opponent just happened to be Gunther. John Cena, we knew for a year that his last match was going to be in December. His opponent happened to be Gunther. And so they're saying that Gunther retired these guys, but technically they were retiring regardless. Like to me, Shawn Michaels retired Ric Flair because the stipulation was when I lose, I retire.
Yeah.
To me, you can't say I'm retiring at the end of the year and you're my last opponent. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the wording of it or whatever. And I know
Yeah.
they're trying to build Gunther into this thing and you know and maybe you know if he wins Sunday or Saturday at the Rumble, then yeah, he truly did retire AJ Styles because like you and I or like you said and like I thought as well, we were going to get 2026 at least probably I figured we'd get AJ through the first half of the year.
Mhm.
But again, if Jericho's coming in, there's rumor that Brock is going to retire after SummerSlam. Again, all rumors, so we don't really truly know. But that's what I like about this time of year is there is that level of unpredictability. And I know I just said we were going to do one this last question, move on, but one other thing, like as I saw Shinsuke come out to the ring for Saturday night's main event, and I remembered, you know, he won
He
the
worked there. Oh,
yeah, well, I did think a while back that he had gotten released, but I saw, you know, that he's obviously still there. He won the Rumble in 2018.
18.
Yeah, and it was different. I think he eliminated Roman Reigns. I watched a video the other day of all the last 10 or 15 years of eliminations, and you know, and so they kind of put some push behind him, and I thought he was going to win the title at that year's WrestleMania, and he obviously did not. Um, an unconventional Rumble winner, and I think 2025's winner of Jey Uso, unconventional. And there have been a few others along the way, especially when you add the main event of WrestleMania stipulation to the mix. So we've seen it happen a couple of times where these unconventional guys win. Do you think, you know, Shinsuke won it and then kind of went away? Del Rio won it and kind of went, you know, he hot potatoed the belt, but Shinsuke never won it. Jay had it for a minute. It was something different. Fans bitch about the predictability of it, but then when you do something like a Shinsuke or an AJ, I'm sorry, or a Jey Uso, then they can well, they don't deserve, you know. So it's like,
No.
where do you draw the line? And is Cody going to be destined to be a three-peat like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who technically has that asterisk, but you know, uh, will Cody win the? Who do you think? Are you still looking for a dark horse like LA Knight, or do you think Cody is going to be the one to end up winning this?
Uh, if Cody wins, I will complain
Riot?
on this podcast.
You what?
I will complain on this podcast. Um, yeah, I hope Cody doesn't. I think it depends on where you go after Rumble with the person.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we have the two world titles, the winner of the Rumble doesn't necessarily actually main event
Mm-hmm.
WrestleMania.
Right.
Um, so in that regard, I think you can do a dark horse candidate, but it has to be someone that I think the fans buy into as soon as they win the Rumble, and that's where I think the Jey Uso thing last year was he just wasn't there as a single star yet.
Yeah.
Not that I mean, obviously his tag team credentials. If it was a tag team Royal Rumble victory, sure, but
Yeah.
as a single star, I don't think anybody had. I don't know if fans had the belief that he was actually going to be a made man.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've seen, he's back now, tag team champion.
Right.
So, but again, is that just part of the overall the long term storytelling that they're doing with Jay and Jimmy? Um, I don't know. We'll see. But who do I think will win? I do think probably it should be LA Knight. But then again, I don't like the guy comes back from injury and wins
Mm.
Rumble trope. So I guess I'll have to wait and see who all is in the Rumble, and then I'll make my prediction. I like Jerry Lawler used to do.
Yes, yes. Well, let's head over to our questions now. And again, I posted this late on on Saturday, so we didn't give people much time to come up with questions. Ken Johnson, though, always coming through. His first question is about Shane McMahon, asking kind of where he's been. And I know we saw him from a selfie or a fan photo. I don't remember if it was a selfie or a fan photo at the MSG show
Hmm.
last year with John Cena's last MSG show, and people, I guess it was Raw technically, and they showed Stephanie in the crowd, and people were, oh, Shane is way back, and people were complaining, and my instinct was, and my thought, and I don't think we talked about this, but I was gonna do a little rant post about it, but I didn't. But it's like maybe Shane didn't want to be seen. He has obviously chosen a different path, and we don't know the whole story behind what's going on with him in WWE with Stephanie and Triple H and his relationship with Vince. I don't think you watched the Vince McMahon documentary, but you know, Shane speaks from the heart, I think, and there's obviously a you know dynamic there that probably a psychiatrist could delve deep into. But you know, Ken, I don't know. There were pictures at one point of Shane with Tony Khan and with the Young Bucks. I think that was all to just get people talking. I think Shane's happy doing what he's doing and outside of the wrestling bubble. And, he may pop up here and there every once in a while. And, what he wants to do, I think he could do. If he wanted to go back to WWE, I would almost imagine there'd be a spot for him. But again, I don't know the relationship dynamics, but he seems content and happy from what I've seen of his post on social media with his family and friends. So, what do you think about Shane? Does he need to come back? Does WWE need him, or is it just kind of a come and go thing?
Yeah, based on the last time that we saw Shane, when speaking of Rumbles, was it the Rumble in St. Louis the last time
I
he
think
was
it
there?
was, yeah, 2022.
22? Okay. Yeah, the one where Shane um, wanted to book himself to go over,
Hmm.
allegedly. And so I don't think, if that's what Shane is bringing to the table, I don't think they need Shane. And, I think after 25 years, we don't need McMahons on TV.
Hmm.
When I watched Saturday Night's Main Event last night, and it opened with Stephanie McMahon, which, granted, she said Joe Testosterone or whatever his name is,
That's the tour.
Testator, was stuck in Detroit at the airport. Um, so he wasn't there. But just to have Stephanie by herself, you know, hosting the show or opening the show, I just like, we don't need McMahon's anymore. Like that. And granted, Stephanie's not out there being the heel,
Mhm.
the silver dollar or silver spoon princess or whatever it's. Um, but yeah, I think there comes a time where you just need to, I don't want to say move on, but phase them out and bring something new in. I will say I can't remember the name of the film, but Dwayne Johnson did not get an Oscar nomination this past week when the Oscar noms came out, but Shane McMahon's wife did, for a movie that she produced.
Really good for her.
Yes. And
I,
again, I don't remember which one it was, so I can't tell you right offhand, but I'm sure Google machine can help you out.
Google will help. All right, Ken's next set of questions here, and he's got three, and I'm going to save uh, my favorite one for last. But the first one I think is a no-brainer. Do you think it is time for WWE to have a physical location for the Hall of Fame?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, access I think is about the closest, and I guess now it's what did they call it? The Superstore or the Super
the world
or when they go to WrestleMania, and I think they
yeah.
probably set it up for SummerSlam now. You see a lot of cool artifacts, especially for those that are getting inducted in that year's Hall of Fame. But you know,
Mhm.
we saw Vince McMahon's burned out limousine one year, and Andre the Giant's leg cast from when Killer Khan broke his leg. there's a lot of cool, costumes and things. I say costumes, but the ring attire that superstars wore for big matches and things. So um, to have that all in one spot, Orlando seems like the no-brainer spot for that. I think at one point there was
Mm.
even rumors or speculation that they were going to do something on that boardwalk going toward Universal Studios.
Oh, City Walk, yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I would think even now that they're doing more in Vegas and TKO own or not TKO owns, but TKO and UFC is synonymous with Vegas apparently as
Mhm.
well, but I guess figuring out where you're going to put it obviously would be in a tourist attraction, not in Stanford, Connecticut, but
Yeah.
it'd be cool to see, I think, and travel and go and visit. But yeah, I think it's long overdue, honestly.
Yeah, I guess it all depends. Like I said, City Walk would probably be the best place. City Walk or downtown Disney would be,
Hmm.
because then you're getting huge foot traffic.
Yeah.
And Vegas, even though, like you said, home city of TKO, Vegas seems to be on the downswing as far as tourists go. And
Mm.
also, I mean, every time I go there, I always am amazed when I'm out at midnight and people have their kids out in strollers and
Yeah.
dragging them along. And you're like, what the hell? But I think you would want more of a family friendly place. So, um, and that would be, to me, that would be Florida.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with as much stuff as they have, if you treated it like an actual, like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Grammy Museum, whatever, where you didn't necessarily have the same thing on display the entire time. You have different themes, you
Mm.
rotate, exhibits out, because that way you can get
Right.
repeat
Yeah.
viewers, or visitors. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure WWE has done the cost analysis of
Hmm.
how much would it cost you to set this up versus how much can we expect in profit, and maybe the numbers just aren't there.
It'll be curious to see. I think eventually it will happen though. Next question. It has been a heck of a 25 years in wrestling. What are a few of the best and worst spots? What worked and didn't work? This is Ken speaking. I am on the fence about the WWE network and canceling so many live shows. Also, ticket prices are insane now, while live local shows we were at least affordable. Um, we were talking about that a little bit earlier with is there
Mm.
too much with the wrestling and stuff. The big things over the last 25 years, to me the first thing that came to mind was you know the end of WCW. It
Mm.
was 25 years ago this spring. um, at the time I kind of viewed it as a net positive, but in looking at it over the last 25 years, and it got me to thinking too, what if Eric Bischoff and Fusion Media had been approved to purchase
Mm.
WCW, and what would that have looked like if Turner wasn't so hell-bent on getting wrestling off of its platforms? Could Bischoff have done something with it there, or would it have survived um, on another network? And would it have been a strong, would the Monday Night War have never ended? Would we still, 25 years later, would we still be
Mm.
seeing WCW versus WWE? And I will admit, like, the Attitude Era for the most part is forgettable in terms of stories and what happened and all the title switches and whatnot. But there was that excitement and that anticipation of turning on Nitro and turning on Raw and hitting that back button, going back and forth between the two. I did that all the time back in the day, and I'm sure you did, and most of the folks listening to this probably did that too. I miss that vibe, and obviously with the evolution of technology, that'd be much harder to do with Netflix and then trying to flip and
Mm.
find where WCW would be at. But uh, that's to me one of the bigger events of the last 25 years, and a hindrance to the business. But then without that, we wouldn't have had TNA. We wouldn't have probably gotten AEW. Um, but what do you think? Would WCW have survived the last 25 years, do you think? Because back in the day, I never dreamed of a day where wrestling companies would go out of business, and we saw it with the AWA, we saw it with the companies eventually did, but I thought WCW with the billionaire owner was going to be around forever.
Yeah. And I think, had Turner not merged with AOL, which now you look back again 25 years and be like, man, that AOL Time Warner merger, when AOL was the one calling the shot, AOL was calling the shots because they were the big dog, and
Right.
now they're gone. So, um, you know, along with WCW shutting down, ECW also shut down. And I
Mhm.
think, especially in the late 90s, before the Attitude Era, that was, I don't know if you can hear the young kid running around
I was
outside,
going
but
to say, let those kids come out and talk.
I, yeah, I got to change my mic before next time and get something a little more less powerful. But with ECW, ECW, without ECW, I don't think you have the Attitude Era.
Right.
um, because you don't have Bischoff stealing the cruiserweights and focusing on them, and you don't have Vince Russo stealing the adult content from ECW.
Hmm.
And so that to me would be like, if WCW stuck around, if Bischoff was able to buy it and keep it on TV, we wouldn't have. Oh, I shouldn't say. I would say the likelihood of us having TNA, obviously TNA wouldn't exist because Jarrett would probably still be employed.
Hmm.
But I don't think we would have got Ring of Honor,
Hmm.
and I don't know if that indie boom in the early 2000s would have happened,
Yeah.
and would we have not gotten a lot of the talent that have been the main stars over the last 20 years, because a lot of these guys are smaller, more athletic. The focus has been, more on the spot, let's say, instead of the power or the charisma or the personality. Um, and not, I mean, guys obviously do have those traits, but I don't think, I think we would have, I don't know if we would have gotten NWO version 27, although, people say, well, that's Bullet Club, and
Hmm.
that's what happened. So I think it would have been, I don't think we would have been where we are today. And I think wrestling still would have had a lull in the early 2000s, just because I think by 2001, even if WCW was still around, the Attitude Era was on its way out after The Rock and Stone Cold left WWE.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and look, in the golden era where you and I kind of came up with it, 84 to say 90, wrestling was red hot. Um, and then 91, 92, 93, 94, we really kind of the roller coaster dipped. And then it wasn't until, in my opinion, the infusion of Nitro and then kind of forcing WWE's hand to go live and
Mhm.
change things up. And then, like you said earlier, ECW entering into the mix, and it brought it back to, we were riding a higher wave than we were in the golden era. But then, like everything, it ebbs and flows. And so, uh,
Well, let me ask you real quick,
yeah.
because the Attitude Era, Monday Night War, was very popular.
Hmm.
But how many wrestling fans do you think that era created
In the moment, I think it created a lot, but
in the moment? But what I'm
terms
saying, like the
of,
people like
yeah,
us who
no, it
latched
didn't.
on and then have stuck with it.
I think that there are, by default, some kids, I say kids who started watching during the Attitude Era, who, there's a podcast that I listen to pretty regularly, OVP, Our Vantage Point, retro wrestling podcast, and they're about 10, 12 years younger than us. But they are living off of the nostalgia of the 80s when they were too young to be watching. So they're rewatching all of that stuff now. And they came up during, they remember watching like in that tail end of the golden era. But anyway, I'm saying all that to say, I think it produced some fans, but yeah, long-term sustainability. I think that fans like you and I who have ridden the wave literally up and down for the last 40 plus years. And not to say that, because I had friends that when I was a little kid or when I was a kid and started watching, at 10 and 11 years old, they watched and then they all kind of did their thing. And then as we're young adults, they're, you know, reaching out to
Getting
me saying,
girlfriends,
"Hey, I'm
yeah.
watching the NWO right now. You know, can you believe this?" And so they came back and watched, but they're all gone again. You know,
Yeah.
they didn't stick around. So
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about the sickness that you have to be a true wrestling fan. And I think it's, I would say it's what I've said before, wrestling isn't a draw.
mhm,
But during the golden era, Hulkamania, you had that personality. During the Attitude Era, it was all personality. And you need, if to get that boom, I think you need a larger than life story, larger than life persona. And I think that's what wrestling is missing now. I mean, they've got the personas, they've got people that are popular, but they're not expanding outside of the wrestling world specifically, or I don't know, specifically is the word I wanted there, but you get what I'm saying?
I do, and it kind of dovetails into Ken's last question about podcasts. You know, are wrestling podcasts helping or hurting the business? I think too much behind the curtain stuff hinders storytelling, but I can't stop listening to them. And I appreciate the fact that he listens to this one. I think, Chad, it was Colt Cabana, maybe, I don't know, who did
The art
at
of
least
wrestling,
one of
yeah.
the first wrestling podcasts. You actually introduced me to that, and I can remember listening to that in those early days, The Art of Wrestling. And then obviously Stone Cold gets one. Roddy Piper had one before he passed away. You know, Conrad Thompson to me revolutionized and changed the podcast game. Um, this podcast has been around 11 years, little over 11 years, and obviously doesn't have the star power that the others do. But, um, you know, with podcast then also comes along, and we talked a few minutes ago or a little bit ago about Unreal.
Mhm.
You know, does all this curtain behind the curtain stuff, because it's a delicate balance, because fans know, or at least adult fans know, it's a work, and we know that it's predetermined, and we know that, you know,
Yeah.
we're not going to use the F word, but we know that things are. And then, you know, one thing I respect about Bruce Pritchard with his show is Conrad has asked many times what was the magic behind the buried alive match. And Bruce, that's the one area Bruce won't, you know, there are certain areas where Bruce will not completely pull the curtain back. Now Unreal, if it had been around back during that era, we probably would know the secret sauce. I think I know what happened or how it works. You probably know too, but nobody has officially come out and said it. So I do think that the podcast, from a perspective of, I like hearing the old stories. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily need to know, you know, how we made the Undertaker disappear in the buried alive match, or what the, you know, the motivation behind whatever angle was. I just want to
Mhm.
hear kind of the backstories and revisit the nostalgia of it. That's why I like the wrestling podcast. But there are other podcasts out there that are, you know, completely exposing the business, and I get that Vince McMahon did that decades ago. Um, 2020 probably did it actually earlier than that, when
Yeah.
David Schultz smacked John Stossel around, which I still enjoy watching that. But anyway, what say you? Do podcasts hurt or hinder the business in terms of, because we're not obviously looking to, we're just sharing old memories and opinions on some
Yeah.
modern day stuff, but mostly we talk about the old stuff. But what do you think? Do podcasts hurt wrestling?
I don't. I'm gonna say it depends on the podcast. I'm gonna take a very political answer and not actually give an answer. But I think it helps in regards to going back to Colt Cabana's podcast, The Art of Wrestling. I think that helped the independent scene because it gave a voice to wrestlers that weren't getting national exposure at the time. And so it would it'd help fans get to know a personality. And I think when you humanize the character, which could, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, because if you have someone like, um, I'm trying to think like who's the worst heel, if you have them on and you humanize them, then you're like, oh, I want to cheer for that guy because he's got a family at home and he's trying to support. And you're like, no, don't cheer him. You're supposed to hate him.
Yeah.
So in that regard, but I think from what I remember of Colt's podcast, hearing the stories of them on the road. And I know he put out a few documentary DVDs of
Mhm.
road trips and whatnot. So in that regard, I think that helped especially when his show came out, wrestling was still in that kind of lull. So I think it helped, bring fans back in, maybe. Um, I don't listen to the Conrad shows. I've told you I don't have 72 hours in a day to listen to his shows. But I'm with you where from what I have heard, listened to, what I know about him, I think some of the stories are good to hear. And it's interesting to hear the perspective of, oh, why did this happen? Why did the Black Scorpion angle not work?
Mhm.
From what I've heard of Bruce Pritchard, I think he is full of it most of the time and giving you revisionist history and not telling you, because I think he's been in the wrestling business for 40, 50 years. He's still got that carny mentality,
Mhm. Mhm.
which again, that's his
Mhm.
thing. And if fans like it, then awesome. That's good for them. He's a little too smarmy for me. Then you have shows like this one where it's just two guys talking, and again, no insight into the behind the scenes, no real knowledge, just like you said, sharing opinions
Yeah.
or viewpoints. And then I think you have your podcasts that are trying to be um, clickbait, rage baity,
Yeah.
where they'll criticize anything that happens and they'll expose anything that they think is truthful as long as it gets hits.
Yeah.
Those are the ones, and I mean it's across the board and other aspects of entertainment as well. And those are the ones that I think give podcast a bad name.
What do you think about WWE's dipping its toe more into the podcast world? Because, for a long time, it was kind of an untapped market. You had Colt Cabana and Stone Cold and just a handful of former wrestlers, or I guess in Colt's case, he was still a current wrestler, but that were doing it. And now, Cody Rhodes has a show. The Undertaker has a show. I think Edge and Christian had one there for a minute with WWE. Bruce Pritchard's show actually came back. That's how he got back into WWE, was from his podcast. So, I listened to the John Cena episode of What Do You Want to Talk About? That's the one that Cody Rhodes hosts. I could not get in, like, I didn't finish it. I could, even though I wanted to hear Cena's story, there was something about it I just couldn't get into. And I
I mean,
watched.
I
Go ahead.
think real quick, sorry to interrupt. I think Cena is also kind of in that Bruce Pritchard vein of he wants to tell you he'll only tell you what he wants to tell you, basically. Like it I I don't think it's 100% authentic.
Hmm.
And maybe that's just me being the cynical one that I am. But I would say him, I guess Cena and The Rock are both their their public personas, I think, are very well crafted
Hmm.
to not uh, hurt um, their product.
Hmm.
And so when they start talking, it's like, yeah, that's great, but I can almost see the gears working of I'm going to spin it this way instead of being 100% truthful.
Yeah. Well, and the Undertaker's podcast, which I think he started his podcast on his own and now is morphed into the WWE product, which is now why we see his wife, Michelle McCool. I've seen clips. Um, as long as she's not chiming in, it's not that bad. But like you
I
said,
say I think the show's gotten better since she's been on.
oh, really?
I don't listen to his show. What are you talking about? I'm just going with off internet complaints.
But I think that's another one that for 30 years protected that character so well. You know, the Undertaker would not host a podcast, but I know he
He
is.
did go on Regis and Kathy Lee, though.
Yeah, that's true. But being retired
Yeah.
and the evolution, then once you leave that world behind you, there's still money to be made. So
Yeah.
I don't fault that, and I do kind of like hearing some of his stories and the things that he talks about. But Man, when Michelle weighs in, eh, I I get it, but I don't get it. But anyway, so yeah, I think that depending on the podcast and depending on the content, I listen to Kevin Nash's podcast, which back in the day I did not like Kevin Nash, the performer. But his podcast is wide ranging. He talks about everything. It's not really. I mean, it is a wrestling podcast because it's two wrestling people talking, but there's a lot of other stuff that goes into his podcast, a life. His son died a few years ago. He talks about that still a lot, and so I like hearing his perspective on things. And then, like I said, I do listen to. I have a 2-hour commute every day, so I have time. I have nothing but time, especially now that my coworker who lived down the street from me doesn't work with me anymore. I don't have anyone to ride with, so I don't have anything to do but listen to podcasts. So, and I've actually started listening a little bit more because some of the Conrad podcasts have been repeats. So I've been listening to Jim Cornette's podcast, which it's that now that's kind of the I don't want to say rage bait, but man, he doesn't hold anything back, and I think that is also though part of a shtick, if you will, um, to get people pissed off and to listen or to go and you know further divide. I think that's not to dip into the whole world of politics, but that I mean, it's wrestling and politics aren't that different, and you get the sides that, and probably every other genre, but wrestling is what I'm into, so that's what I
Yeah.
see. So you'll get the people like Cornette to get people riled up over AEW stuff, or you'll see, Conrad, even though he says I'm a WWE fan, but he doesn't shit on AEW like he shits on WWE. He doesn't view it that.
Well, that's because AEW is awesome and WWE has a lot to improve on. I mean,
Okay.
when you're just spitting facts, it's like it's going to come off. Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, sometime just listen to a little bit of Cornette and
I no,
have
I've heard enough of Cornette. I don't.
it.
Again, and that's the thing where I'm like, this will go, I guess, into the not political, but the personal aspect of, we've said it before. I'm 51 years old. When I was 21, Cornette probably I would have been like, yeah, Cornette is awesome, because he's spitting the truth. He's telling Triple H to, whatever. I'm trying to remain clean and not go off on a cursing rant. But at 51, I'm like, I don't care about that. Like if that's your life, that you can only complain about things, and I'll complain to you privately about
Right.
something, but to make that a personal persona or a public persona, no, man, I got other things to waste my time on in life than to just listen to some 60-year-old guy rant and rave.
Yes. Instead, listen to well, I guess a 52-year-old and a 51-year-old
Yeah.
rant and rave. But no, it's been fun, Chad. Anything else before we put a bow on this week's episode?
Well, just to go back to the beginning, sort of our conversation, the movie Train Dreams, which I believe is available on Netflix, is the movie that Shane McMahon's wife produced.
Okay.
Who's a producer on, so that's what she got her Oscar nomination on. I started watching it. I got about 15 minutes in and got bored. So your mileage may vary. I had to turn on the Apple again to wake myself up.
All right. What an endorsement. All right, friends. Thanks for listening and or watching. Again, enter that Royal Rumble contest. Let us know your thoughts on this week's episode. If you have questions for future shows, weigh in as well, and we will see you next time.